Good evening. This week, we've experienced a lot. On Monday, May 10th, we celebrated together Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, recalling the events of the Six-Day War and the unification of the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Yerushalayim. Sunday, we will begin in the evening celebrating the two-day festival here in the United States in Chicago of Shavuot, what our rabbis taught us as Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the giving and our receiving of God's holy Torah. This week, I had a wonderful opportunity to engage our 5th and 6th graders in a study of a Mishnah that talks about the process of Matan Torah. It is the first Mishnah of Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Sages. And I'd like to share with you the insights that those students provided me. The Mishnah begins, Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai. Moses received Torah from Sinai. One student realized that there is no definite article hey before the word Torah, and therefore at this point, does it mean Torah Shebechtav, the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses, or does it include other aspects, Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, or even other aspects of Jewish life? That same student then noticed that it does not say Mi Har Sinai, from Mount Sinai, but rather simply Mi Sinai, from the desert plain of Sinai. Student commented to me, said, Rabbi, this must mean that Torah can be received and given anywhere, that our conversations with God can happen in any location, even in the wilderness of Sinai. So impressed, I continued on and listening to other students. As the Mishnah goes on, Umsara lehoshua, that knowledge was Umsara, given over. But the language is not, as a student noticed, notain, to give, but rather almost as a gift of love, of an inheritance. Not after someone passes away, while someone is still alive. Moses gave this great gift that he received from God to his second in command, Yehoshua, Joshua. The Yehoshua lezikenim, and Joshua then gave it over, bequeathed it over to the elders of the community. Uzikenim liniviim. Notice the change of people. We started out with one individual, Moshe. We then went to another individual, Yehoshua. But then individual leadership did not seem to be enough for the Jewish people. And so Yehoshua gave it to a group of elders, Zikanim. But after a period of time, the Zikanim realized in leadership, we still need someone to make decisions. And so they brought it back to the individual prophet of the given time. And that lasted for many years. Hence, the Mishnah uses the language in the plural, not Navi or Neviah, but rather Nevi'im, prophets. Brilliant, brilliant understanding that our students already at such a young age are able to gather. The Mishnah goes on, Univi'im Masura Lanshe Knesset Hagdolah, and the prophets then handed it over to the rabbis, the men, of the great assembly. Haim Amru Shlosha Divarim, and this group of scholars taught 3 important things. Havu mitunin badin, that we should be measured when rendering decisions of a legal nature. And students notice two things about this phrase. The first is that it does not use the Hebrew hayu for the verb be, but rather the Aramaic formulation hevu. Notice we have a change in language. The rest of the Mishnah is all in Hebrew. Why is this in Aramaic? The students suggested is because at the time of this Mishnah's creation, its writing, the Jews were living in an Aramaic spoken society. They were not living in the heart of Medinat Yisrael, of Israel, but rather somewhere else. In addition, they were now, for one of the first times in their history, without the centralized Beit HaMikdash, the temple, and therefore this new way of how do we remember the Beit HaMikdash and how do we live in the new, what they would call contemporary time of their day, Jewish society. The rabbis who were the dayanim, the judges, needed to be careful because people were still learning. The Mishnah goes on, V'hamidu tamidim harbeh, because this is a newer way of life. As the Siddur tells us on Shabbat, the Torah is a or chadash. It is a new light. You need to teach many people or it's going to fade away. And the Mishnah ends, Vasu siag la Torah. And those people, those rabbis, shall make a fence, protective nature around the Torah. And a student in room 204 said the following to me, Rabbi Bauman, did you notice that the Mishnah begins with the word Torah without the hey, meaning the 5 books of Moses in the beginning, but it ends with La Torah, which is Lamed and Hey put together, specifically talking about the 5 books of Moses. That God's instructions meet us everywhere and anywhere we are in life, whether here at Hyde Park at Akiba Schechter, whether where I live in Skokie, or wherever we travel anywhere in the world. God's instructions, God's love is given to us, and we need to be open to receiving it. But whatever that instruction is, the foundation is what Shavuot is all about, Matan Torah, that liminal moment in history when God gave the 5 books of Moses to Moshe Rabbeinu. That is the foundation for Jewish thinking and for Jewish living. What incredible learning I had the opportunity to do this week with our 5th and 6th graders in room 203 and 204. I wish you much simcha, much joy over the festival of Shavuot. Chag Shavuot Sameach, Chag Matan Torah Sameach.